Bitcoin is insanely undervalued because most people don't realize the amount of risk they're taking when they buy things like money market funds, when they buy index funds, when they buy real estate. They don't understand how risky those investments really are. So they're not putting their money into Bitcoin. And in this video, I want to explain to you what exactly will trigger a movement of trillions of dollars of wealth from all of the legacy assets that we have today into Bitcoin. Let's get started. If you understand Bitcoin, you understand how painful it is to talk to other people about it and to see their eyes glaze over when they don't quite understand what you're talking about. They have no idea what you're claiming when you say that the US dollar will fail or fiat currencies will fail. They have no idea what this means. They've never been taught that the US dollar is purely based on trust. It's based on people trusting that the banking system will continue to survive. And people trust that the US dollar will hold some value tomorrow or the next day or the next day after that. But you're noticing now, if you pay attention to what's going on social media, if you're paying attention to what's happening to your grocery bill, if you're paying attention to literally every part of your life, you're noticing that the price of everything is increasing, and it's increasing very fast in terms of dollars. Your cost of living is constantly rising, a dollar here, $2 there, whatever the numbers are. And for some people, this can completely destroy their lives because they can't pay for their mortgage, they can't pay for their bills, they can't pay for all of the things that are required to sustain their life because their job is constantly paying them the same amount of money, but their cost of living keeps rising and it keeps rising, and they have to start cutting things out. If more and more people have to cut out the basics of their life and they have to decrease their standard of living because the US dollar keeps losing value, then do you think that the majority of people will want to continue saving in dollars? The wealthy who are running businesses are impacted by this even more because their businesses are holding on to dollars as their reserve. So it's becoming harder and harder for them to run their business because their savings are decreasing in value and they can't pay for the raw materials that are required to create the products that they need to create to sell to their customers. So when the dollar loses value, it's almost like a ripple effect. You see prices for certain things rise, then prices for other things rise, and prices for other things rise. And at the end of it, everything has just gotten way more expensive, and the consumer is the one who's paying for it because they have to work harder, they have to work longer, they have to do jobs that they don't want to, they have to work multiple jobs, and you're seeing more and more of a side gig or hustle culture on social media because of that, because people can't afford the basic standard of living. In this video, I want to explain to you how exactly you can get away from this, how you can make it so that your life gets cheaper over time. If your life is getting more and more expensive, how are you going to save for your retirement? How are you ever going to get out of this rat race that you're currently in? And how are you ever going to be able to enjoy your life? How are you going to be able to enjoy your family, your friends? You're going to be spending all of your time at work because your cost of living just keeps going up. So the next part of this video, I want you to take this really seriously. If you already understand the basics of Bitcoin, share this video with other people who could benefit from it. I think that this is going to change a lot of lives, but only if you actually stick through it. If you actually put in the time to understand these concepts, watch these parts over and over again until you get it. If you pay attention to this and you actually absorb what I'm saying, I think that your life is going to change within a very short period of time because it's going to change your mindset. It's going to make you think of things completely differently. I want to start with this graphic from Jesse Meyer's Croesus BTC. I've shown this before. It's updated based on how the market has changed in that time. But you can see here, Bitcoin is about $2.3 trillion. Gold is $22 trillion. I believe it's up to $25 trillion now. Art and collectibles are at $27 trillion. Equities are $135 trillion. Money is $129 trillion. Bonds are $318 trillion. And real estate is $370 trillion. So Bitcoin is a very, very, very small portion of this total amount of assets. So this total amount of assets is something like 1,000 trillion, so 1 quadrillion. Bitcoin is only 2 trillion of that 1 quadrillion total amount of assets. So the entire world is using these things to save for the future. If you have any kind of savings, if you have any kind of wealth that you're putting away for the future, you would probably be buying one of these investments. So you'd be either saving in cash, let's say in the dollar, maybe you put it in your bank account, you leave it in your bank account. You might be buying bonds, government issued bonds. Keep in mind that government issued bonds can be created at will. The US government can keep creating more and more bonds, and it can keep flooding the market with them. So this number will always continue to rise. Real estate, there's a finite number of real estate, and because there's a finite number of real estate and everybody wants a house, you see that the price of houses keeps going up. And this number is at $370 trillion because banks are able to create more and more money and they're able to give it to people so that they can go and buy houses if they want to. And then we have equities. Stock values are always going up because the stocks represent companies that are creating the products that we use on a day-to-day basis. This is McDonald's stock price. You can see it's always going up and it'll continue to go up forever because people will always need to eat. And McDonald's is relatively well known compared to pretty much every other restaurant out there. If you see a McDonald's, you know exactly what you'll get, even though the food is garbage. The ingredients that they use are terrible. Everything about McDonald's foods kind of disgusts me, but McDonald's will always go up in value because they are able to sell a product that people want. People recognize it, people will buy it, and people will always need to eat. So the stock price for McDonald's will continue to go up. When your cost goes up for any specific product, let's say Microsoft, your Microsoft 360 membership price went up, your trip to Cuba goes up in price, your phone goes up in price. All of these investors, the people who buy these stocks, benefit from that. So Coca-Cola, for example, has always gone up. They give a massive dividend to their investors. If you held Coca-Cola stock from the last few decades, you would have made a lot of money. Now let's go back to this graphic. We can see here equities will continue to go up. They're already $135 trillion. Art, cars, and collectibles will also probably always go up. One of the things that has this category constantly going up is sentimental value. We have sentimental value in the things that we buy, or they're unique or they're limited in quantity. And a lot of people use these things as savings. So people buy cars because they want to hold on to value for the future. People buy artwork because they want to, again, hold on to value for the future. They have nothing else that they can buy for the money that they have and at the same time enjoy. So they enjoy art. These are some of the most expensive pieces of artwork. So you can see here, this one's pretty nice, worth $577 million. I don't really understand what this one is. I haven't looked into the history. It doesn't really look like anything specific, but it's worth $398 million. This is a pretty interesting picture. $350 million. This one's pretty interesting as well, I guess. $280 million though. And then we have gold, which is worth $25 trillion today. Gold is probably the best form of money that we've ever had. Gold was used as money for thousands of years. One of the reasons why we don't use gold as money today, and it's separate from what we do use as money today, is the fact that you can't really move gold around very easily. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to maintain gold. You have to have a vault, you have to pay for security. It's also very difficult to move it around because if you wanted to pay somebody for a transaction with gold, you'd have to either ship it. It could take days, it could take weeks to get to that person. And you don't know if what they got is exactly what you gave them because you have to trust other parties in order to transact in gold. So we started using coins, banknotes, money market accounts, and savings or checking accounts and time deposits as money because they're much easier to move around. So you can leave them with a bank. The bank can digitally move your money around through the internet. But one of the problems with this is the fact that there's no cost to creating more money anymore. There's no cost because most of the money is no longer physical. In the past, banks were limited to only being able to create a certain amount of money because the money was physical. Today, money is digital. So, what banks can do is they can create as much money as they want to and they can add it to the economy. And that's one of the reasons why, when you see the prices of houses around you going up, that's one of the reasons why that happens. That's one of the reasons why the rent that you're paying is constantly going up because banks can create as much money as they want to and they can give it to people who are demanding housing. So if you can't afford a house, you can go to your bank and they'll give you a mortgage so that you can buy whatever house you want. And you can make payments over the next few years, next few decades, for however long you want. And you can keep refinancing that loan. The value of the house will continue to go up so you can take on bigger and bigger loans. All of this is basically going to trap you into working forever because the amount of money in the system can keep rising and it can keep rising. So more and more money can chase the same number of goods. Think about how hard it is to create more houses. On the other hand, think about how hard it is for a loan officer to click a button on their keyboard and approve a loan for somebody to buy that house. If somebody wants to buy a house, they can easily go and buy one because there's infinite money in the system. What you're noticing right now is that the wealthiest people in the world don't want dollars. The poorest people in the world are the ones who want dollars. The people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they're the ones saving their dollars because they can't really invest for the long term. They have nothing saved. And the entire system is designed to keep it that way. It's designed to keep you paycheck to paycheck unless you take really drastic action. So, unless you cut out, let's say, all of your entertainment expenses, you're going to stay paycheck to paycheck forever. Even if you cut out all of your entertainment expenses, eventually you'll go back to being paycheck to paycheck because everything else will get even more expensive over time. So, what you have to do is you're forced to give away your dollars, you're forced to give away what you see as stable in exchange for government bonds or for real estate or for equities. Because if you don't buy those things, you know for a fact that your cost of living is going to go up. And because your cost of living is going to go up, you're going to go broke over time. You have to remember that most people are completely risk averse. They don't want to buy rental properties. They don't want to manage a property. They don't want to have to deal with tenants. They don't want to buy equities because they don't know who the person that's running the company is. They don't understand the business plan. They don't understand anything about the market. So why would they want to buy all these things without understanding them? I think today, most people are pretty much just brainwashed to believe that equities are savings. When they save in these index funds, they don't really know what's in them. They don't understand which companies they're investing in. Most people don't seem to understand that in the short term, the price of real estate is extremely volatile. And we're seeing the prices of houses dropping in the short term right now. This chart here shows you that the number of people making late payments on their rentals is increasing. It went from 8.8% in mid 2024 to 11.7% in June 2025. This is a result of companies shutting down, people losing their jobs, and just not being able to pay for the things that they need to survive. If they can default on their rental payments or if they can be late a few weeks or a few months, they can still stay in that property because of eviction laws. But if they stop buying groceries, then I think they'd be in a much worse position. Most people don't understand how risky these legacy assets can be. Just because their property rights are being maintained today, it doesn't mean that they're going to be maintained into the future. If the US dollar fails and the US government needs money somehow, then it's probably going to charge you an unrealized capital gains tax. It'll sell more bonds into the market. It'll devalue the bonds that you have. It'll do whatever it can in order to continue to survive. The only real way to get out of this system is probably to own gold because you can bury gold. Nobody knows if you have physical gold. Nobody can track it. If you want to transact with someone, nobody else has to know about that transaction if you own gold because gold is not a digital asset. It's not connected to the banking system. On the other hand, with stocks, you have to go through a brokerage. You can't buy stocks on your own. You can get stock certificates, but even then, your government's probably going to know that you own those stocks. With gold, nobody knows that you own it, and nobody can stop you from owning it because you can be the only one who knows that it's there. Art, cars, and collectibles are very similar because with cars, for example, nobody can track them. Artwork, nobody can track them. They're not digital. Collectibles, same thing. Let's say a hockey card. They're not digital, but the issue with all of these things is that they're physical and you can't transact with physical things in a digital world. The current financial system relies on most people not understanding how the financial system works because the current financial system is an illusion. It's a scam. It's everything that you don't want your money to be. Today, we have the experts telling you that increasing the supply of money doesn't cause inflation. And this was posted in 2016. So over the last 9 years, what has your experience been like? I think that the price of most things have doubled, if not more. And you can see here, neither do rapid growth in government debt, declining interest rates, or rapid increases in a central bank's balance sheet. What you see here is a financial system that's designed to steal from you by lying to you. The entire financial system, the education system, it seems like everything is interconnected because we don't learn how these things work in school. We just trust other people to learn how they work for us. I'm going to give you a very basic example of what's going on here and why your cost of living just keeps going up. If we look at the green circle here, we'll say that that's the total money supply. So if the entire system had $100 in it, this is what it would look like. You have, let's say, $5. You have 5% of the total money supply. You can use that $5 to buy certain things. So let's say you can buy a basket of groceries. At some point, if the total money supply were to double, but the amount of groceries doesn't double, what will happen to your cost of living? Your cost of living will go up because now you have 2.5% of the money supply rather than 5%. The total money supply doubled from 100 to 200, but you still have only $5. So your total percentage of the money supply decreased because you still have the same amount of money, but the total money supply increased by 2 times. So again, you could buy, let's say, one basket of groceries for your $5. When the amount of money in the financial system increases, the people who are willing to offer you these goods and services that you want to buy, let's say cars, groceries, their input costs are going up. If the amount of money in the system doubles, but the amount of goods in the system doesn't double, the price of everything has to go up because the people who received that additional $100 can now go to the grocery store and they can buy the things that they don't want to. What the increasing money supply does is it makes it so that one group of people doesn't have to think about opportunity costs while the other group of people does have to think about it. So in the current financial system, we have people who own houses being able to go to a bank to have more money created and handed over to them. If you just save this $5 or this 2.5% of the total money supply, you're going to keep losing and you're going to keep losing because the total money supply can keep rising and rising. You see the same thing with cars. The amount of money that you have maybe can buy a certain car at one point. At some point, the price of cars will go up because the amount of money in the system has also risen. When the money supply increases, there's more money chasing the same number of goods. The same thing applies to houses. If somebody has a good credit history and they can handle their payments going forward, they can borrow as much money as they want to from the bank, and the bank will give it to them. They'll print new money out of thin air and they'll pay for that person's purchase of that house. But you have to understand that houses are meant to be a savings vehicle. Houses are meant to be shelter. Houses are meant to be lived in by people who want to live in them. Because banks are able to create money out of thin air and then they're able to lend it to people and charge interest on the money that they're creating, which again was created out of thin air, they're able to extract a significant amount of value from the economy because whoever has to pay those mortgage payments on that house, whoever has to pay the interest on that house is the one that's funding the, let's say, the executive's bonus or their second vacation home or their yacht. And I have an example here. If you buy a $625,000 house, you put down 20%, you have a $500,000 mortgage with a 6% interest rate and a 30-year term, you're paying $579,000 in interest. $579,000. You bought the house for 625K, but you're paying $580,000 in interest. The $625,000 house cost you $1.2 million because of interest. And this is the bank's share of being able to create money out of thin air. And who pays for this? The person who pays for this is the person who's either renting the house or the person who's living in it. You can pay off this mortgage over 30 years with monthly payments of $3,345. It's so easy for the person buying the house, but what this does is it pressures the prices of houses to go up. When people buy things that they can't afford, it signals to the market that the price of everything should go up because they're taking supply out of the market and there's only a fixed amount of that good available to be bought. So we can see here houses cost so much because people can borrow money that's created with the press of a button to buy them. If everyone had cash to pay for their home, prices would drop significantly because people would have to think about the opportunity costs. They'd have to think about having to save for the next 30, 35 years and paying for that house in a lump sum. So mortgages aren't really designed to help you. Mortgages are designed for banks. They're designed to earn profits for the banking system so that the banking system can continue to grow and the people working at banks can continue to make as much money as they possibly want to. And all of this, again, is a result of having a form of money that can be created out of nothing. It can be created out of thin air. So if you save in this thing that can be created out of thin air and more of it can be created, you're going to see that the value of the savings that you have will continue to decrease. And most people don't quite understand this. So I'll show you another graphic that explains this really well. What you see on this chart here is the purchasing power of the US dollar. It says a dollar is worth. The purchasing power of the US dollar has fallen sharply over the last century due to rising inflation and money supply. So this is from 2020. Things have gotten even worse. You can see here in 2020, a coffee from McDonald's cost $1. Now it probably costs $2. In 1913, $1 would buy 30 Hershey's chocolate bars. So if you saved money from here until, let's say, 1990, so from, let's say, 1913 to 1990, you pass away, you give your savings to your kids, your money is barely going to buy them anything. So everything that you worked for has basically become worthless. And you're going to notice this in your own lifetime. If you keep saving dollars, if you watch this video and you keep saving in dollars and you continue to put money into your bank account, you're going to see that your purchasing power is going to fall just like this. Today, $1 can buy you one chocolate bar. At some point, you're going to be paying $30 for one chocolate bar because the US dollar's value will continue to decrease forever. So you can see here in 1929, 10 rolls of toilet paper would cost you $1. Today, you'd probably be paying $1.50 for one toilet paper roll. In 1933, you could buy 10 bottles of beer for $1, and today you're probably paying $3 to $4 for one beer. And the reasons for this, again, you can see here, are in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act creates a central bank with the ability to manage the country's money supply. This made it so that banks were able to lend as much money as they want to because they knew that people aren't going to take their collateral out of the banking system. So what they did was they created a fractional reserve banking system that created more and more money. It kept adding more and more money to the system. And the amount of money that we have today is way more than we had in the past. The Great Depression was a result of banks using customer money to give out to other people so that they can gamble on the stock market. And then you can see here in 1933, the possession of gold in the US was criminalized. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement was established to make it so that the US dollar is used as the world reserve currency. In 1971, the gold standard was abandoned and currencies were no longer linked to gold. So the US dollar was no longer linked to gold. Before 1971, countries could exchange their US dollars for gold. But after 1971, that was no longer the case. So what happened here was that anybody who was holding US dollars, because they expected that they'd be able to eventually exchange them for gold, now could no longer exchange them for gold. After this point, the price of gold skyrocketed because people lost trust in the dollar. And the people who understood how the financial system worked gave their dollars away and they bought other things. So they bought stocks, they bought real estate, they bought gold, they bought bonds. Then you can see here in 2008, quantitative easing started as a response to the financial crisis. Then in 2020, the US money supply grew by $3.8 trillion, equivalent to 20% of the dollars that were ever created. If governments can create more money, they will. They'll dump it into the market and they'll keep doing that going forward because they can. They know that you trust in the dollar. So they know that you'll keep holding the dollar. If you keep holding the dollar, that means that whatever debt that they create and add it to the system, it has value and they can buy whatever they want with that debt. Keep in mind that we give the dollar value by using it. The US government does not give the dollar value. The dollar doesn't really have value. The value is an illusion. The US government can force the people in the US to use it, and the Bretton Woods Agreement made it so that there's a network effect of other countries that started using US dollars. But eventually, people can stop using the US dollar. People can move away from the dollar because if the dollar keeps losing value, then they have no reason to save in dollars. The US dollar can lose 99% of its value, then it can lose another 99%, then it can lose another 99%. This can keep going until the last person who saves in dollars stops saving in dollars. And I don't know when that's going to happen. That can continue to happen for a very long time. So now we come to this final solution with Bitcoin. Bitcoin can't be created out of thin air. You only have 21 million, and those 21 million will be the maximum supply cap of Bitcoin. I created this spreadsheet a while ago to explain why I think Bitcoin's price is going to go up forever. The new supply of Bitcoin is decreasing over time. From January 2009 to November 2012, there were 50 Bitcoin being created every 10 minutes. From November 2012 to July 2016, there were 25 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. Then from July 2016 to May 2020, there were 12.5 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. Then from May 2020 to April 2024, there were 6.25 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. From April 2024 until some point in 2028, I think it'll probably be either February or March, it'll be 3.125 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. And this number is going to keep decreasing and decreasing until there's no more Bitcoin created. You can see here in 2140, there will basically be no more Bitcoin created. The last fractions of Bitcoin will be created and added to the economy at some point before 2140. So there is quite a few things happening here, and this is kind of difficult to absorb if you look at it for the first time. Over time, the amount of Bitcoin is reaching a maximum limit. In the first 4 years, 10.5 million Bitcoin were created. Then in the following 4 years, another 5.25 million Bitcoin were created, and so on until today. 19.7 or 19.8 million Bitcoin have been issued and they're in the economy. They're already circulating. You can see in total, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. So this is the total number of Bitcoin that will ever exist. And this chart shows you the amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist versus the amount of Bitcoin that will be created over time. So the amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist will maximize at 21 million. Then at some point, there will be no more Bitcoin created in 2140. Over time, as it gets easier and easier to create more dollars because dollars are digital and all it is an update in somebody's spreadsheet, it becomes more and more difficult to create more Bitcoin. So you can see here the amount of seconds that it takes to create more Bitcoin is going to increase. In 2009, it took 12 seconds to create one Bitcoin because there were 50 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. 10 minutes has 50 12-second intervals. And then we can see in 2012 that changed to 24 seconds per Bitcoin. In 2016, it went to 48 seconds per Bitcoin. In 2020, it went up to 96 seconds per Bitcoin. In 2024, it's up to 192 seconds per Bitcoin. This is the current rate of issuance. Going forward, this number is going to keep doubling and doubling until at some point, there's barely any Bitcoin being created. In the last 36 years of Bitcoin's creation, so while Bitcoin's being produced, you're going to see only 1.24 new Bitcoin created and added to the economy. Another way to look at this is that the number of coins being created every minute, the number of coins being issued every minute is decreasing and it's going to trend to zero until it actually hits zero. I added some price predictions here a while ago. This was about when the last halving happened around April of 2024. I think that this cycle's high will be 250K, but it could be much higher. I think that the next cycle's low will be 100K. Again, we'll see what happens. We'll see where the price goes after the next bear market, if there is even a bear market, and we'll see how right or wrong I end up being. The most important thing about Bitcoin compared to fiat currencies is that the inflation rate just keeps decreasing. In the first 4 years, it was 100%. Then in the next 4 year period, it was 33%. In the current 4 year period, from April 2024 till some point in 2028, you're going to see that only 3.22% of the supply was added. This is lower than the amount of inflation that we experience in the US dollar in 1 year. So the US dollar is losing value faster in 1 year than Bitcoin is losing value in 4 years. And it's not really losing value. This is already predetermined. We already know that there's going to be 21 million Bitcoin. This is just the block reward that miners are receiving for securing the network. And just to tie this in with the real world, I want to show you mempool.space. This is the website that shows you every single transaction that's ever happened on the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin network doesn't go based on the time that we use. It goes based on blocks. So it goes based on how many blocks have been created. Every 210,000 blocks, the supply of Bitcoin decreases by 50%. So you can see here at block number 1, the supply was 50 Bitcoin. You can see here the amount of Bitcoin that was created. The Coinbase transaction is added on every single block. You can see here on January 8th, 2009, 50 Bitcoin were issued to this address here. The Bitcoin is still there. That's one of the crazy parts. And something else that you can see here is that back then, the price of this Bitcoin that was received was $0. So 50 Bitcoin was the equivalent of $0. More recently, there was a transaction. So this was August 3rd of 2025. This was for a very small amount of Bitcoin. So this was for 5,000 Satoshis. 5,000 Satoshis as a fraction of this, you can see what the difference is. But this 5,000 Satoshis was worth $5.71 when it was sent. So it was $5.71 for 0.00005 Bitcoin, while at this time, 50 Bitcoin was worth $0. And now if we go to block 209,999, I had mentioned that Bitcoin goes based on blocks. It goes based on how many blocks have gone by. Every 210,000 blocks, you're going to see a gold block where the supply of Bitcoin decreases by 50%. So 209,999, the amount of Bitcoin created was 50 Bitcoin, 50.536 Bitcoin, including fees. In block 210,000, you can see that that number decreases. So it goes from 50 Bitcoin as the subsidy to 25 Bitcoin as the subsidy. So if you subtract 13.563 from 38.563, you get 25 Bitcoin. And this aligns with that supply schedule that I just showed you. If you want to, you can go back, you can match the times. You can see here, November 28th, 2012 was when the first halving happened. Every 210,000 blocks going forward, there will be a halving. So if we go to block 420,000, you'll see the same thing. gold block, the block before, the reward was 25 Bitcoin. The block right after was 13.076 Bitcoin. So the supply of Bitcoin is decreasing and decreasing. And this is enforced by a group of computers that are running Bitcoin software. If we go to block 630,000, you can see the same thing. It drops another 50%. So do this for yourself. Go look through the numbers. Check block 629,999. You can see the reward was 13.569 Bitcoin, while the total fees were 1.069 Bitcoin. And then the block right after, the subsidy plus fees was 7.16 Bitcoin. So this is the reward. And the total fees was only 0.91 Bitcoin. So on this block, the amount of Bitcoin that the person who mined it received 6.25 Bitcoin. I don't want to go too much into mining. I don't want to go too much into all of that. I want you to understand that Bitcoin's supply can't be increased at will because anybody can see the ledger of transactions with Bitcoin. On the other hand, with the dollar, only a limited number of people can see the ledger and the creation of money. If somebody were to try to manipulate the Bitcoin system and add more supply to the network, then that transaction would get rejected. On the other hand, if somebody were to try to manipulate the Federal Reserve financial system with the US dollar, you would have no idea. They'd be able to create more dollars if they want to and give it to their friends and family, and you wouldn't know. So I think that Bitcoin is insanely undervalued. I think that people are underestimating the chances of the US dollar failing. I think people are underestimating the chances that people will stop trusting the US dollar and other fiat currencies. And I think that they don't understand how much better Bitcoin is than real estate, than stocks, than bonds, every other form of money out there. Bitcoin is even better than gold because gold is physical and you can't use gold for digital transactions. While with Bitcoin, you can transact very easily because Bitcoin is native to the internet. It was created on the internet as digital money. So what I think you're going to see over the next few years is that Bitcoin's price is going to go up significantly. The people who understand it are going to buy as much as they can. They're going to see that there's a finite supply, while with the US dollar, there is no finite supply. There's no limit to how many dollars can exist tomorrow, the next day, the next year, the next decade. Nobody knows how many dollars will exist. On the other hand, we know exactly how much Bitcoin will exist in the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, even 1,000 years. The supply of Bitcoin will not increase. Right now, if you think about it, most people have no idea what Bitcoin is. Ask the people around you about Bitcoin and they'll probably have no clue what it is. Ask them what money is and they'll probably have no answer for you. So share this video with the people you care about. Tell them about Bitcoin. Tell them about the scam that the current financial system is so that they can exit it before the financial system falls apart. The current financial system is a house of cards, is extremely fragile, and one gust of wind can make it fall over. If you have your value saved in the current financial system, you are at risk of getting it stolen from you by your government or getting it stolen from you by banks who will print as many dollars as they can and add it to the economy. If you keep saving in dollars, your cost of living will keep rising and it'll keep rising until at some point your life is completely unaffordable and you're relying on your government to pay for the things that you need to pay for. So convert the value that you have into Bitcoin because at some point the entire world will be denominated in Bitcoin and nobody will want US dollars because US dollars are created out of nothing. If you're saving in US dollars today and you have no assets, at some point you're guaranteed to be broke because the US dollars trend towards zero will continue because more and more dollars can be created and added to the economy. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend that you join the Bitcoin Explained community where I go a lot more in depth about Bitcoin. We have weekly live sessions. We have a group of people who communicate their own concerns, and I try to answer everything that I can. If you want to, you can also book a one-on-one meeting with me if you want to talk about anything related to Bitcoin, personal finance, whatever it is. You can check both links in the description below. I highly recommend the community because we have weekly live sessions and you can try it out for free. If you found value in this, I would appreciate it if you leave a thumbs up. It's free for you. It really helps my channel. It spreads Bitcoin adoption to more people so that more people understand how Bitcoin works and they don't riot when the financial system collapses. So study Bitcoin and the current financial system for yourself. Don't just trust the experts because the experts are the economists who really understand nothing about the financial system and about Bitcoin. Over time, the price of Bitcoin is going to rise and rise and rise until at some point it's unaffordable to buy 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.01 Bitcoin, whatever amount you can afford today will be unaffordable at some point in the future because Bitcoin is going to 10x, then it's going to 10x again, then it's going to 10x again. So stack as much Bitcoin as you can. You can buy fractions of Bitcoin if you want to. You can buy as much as you want. $1 currently buys something like 890 Satoshis, which are fractions of Bitcoin. Each Bitcoin can be split into 100 million units. So get as many of those units as you possibly can. Over time, I think your decision to buy Bitcoin is going to pay off and you're going to be very happy with yourself for doing so.